welcome into another episode of the Sunbelt Syndicate, the Wrap Edition, where we wrap up the weekend, or the week actually, that was in Sunbelt football. As we know, we had a Thursday night game for the first time this season. Before we get going along too far, thanks to our sponsors, Don't Sleep Energy and Phenom Elite. Get your energy, stay up late when you need to, or take it in the morning, get you a little boost. And Phenom Elite, also now at Dick's Sporting Goods, yet again, I want to remind everyone of that. We got a new one just around the corner from us, Marv. One of those like super Dick's Sporting Goods. I don't know what they're calling it, but the ones that are like really big that have like an experience as part of it. I don't know. Have you heard of these things?
Do they have like a golf simulator and stuff like that in it?
Something like that. I think they have a couple things from the sounds of it. It's like at our local mall now. Like the one of the Dick's Sporting Goods just down the road here closed, and I guess they're just gonna put everybody at this new bigger location. So interesting.
There you go. The one we have in Garner does not have experiences in it, unless you want to say the putting green that they have in there is an experience.
It's a sad one probably, but it is experience. But we are with you from the first kick to the last pitch. Myself, Dominick Crosetto. That over there is Marv Dickens, and we are going to do our best to wrap up the week that was in Sunbelt football. Like I said, we got started on a Thursday, and what a game it was, Marv. How much of that Thursday night game did you get to see?
I actually got to watch a decent amount of it. It actually caught me by surprise. I'm not going to lie. I've been looking forward to that game all week because I was like, okay, is Southern Miss what we think it is? Is Georgia Southern what we think they are? And it was probably midway through the first quarter before I realized that the game was on. So I quickly tuned in and was able to watch pretty much the end of the game, which was an exciting finish, and kind of, if you will. But yeah, it was a good game to kick the Fun Belt, midweek season off. And yeah, Southern Miss is pretty good, guys.
Yeah, definitely pretty good. Wanted to send a shout out to CJ and Artie for tuning in, our resident JMU and Texas State fans. We got to give a lot of credit to Artie for showing up here. I know he knew he was in for a tough season from the last week or two, but there's easy enough for him to just say, you know what, I'm not getting on that show tonight. I'm not touching that. And here he is, still supporting the show. Hopefully having some fun with us again tonight as we go along. But yes, Southern Miss 38-35 over Georgia Southern. Looked comfortably in control for the Golden Eagles early, even on the road there. But Georgia Southern made them work for it. I thought the power of Paulson may just come into play yet again. We've seen what they've done against some pretty good teams in the past, but it just was kind of too little too late after that big lead that the other Southern had built up before they could really jumpstart their offense enough. I mean, J.C. French throws 3 interceptions, so that's going to be very, very tough to overcome there, right?
Yeah, it was. And like you said, Southern Miss jumps out to the 27 or 28-7 halftime lead and kind of thinking, oh man, they're going to get boat raced out of their own stadium. But hey, they put up a hell of a fight to come back. And it was a little bit too late, like you said. They had the 2 touchdowns and what some people would consider trash time, if you will, and then had a chance to recover an onside kick and possibly win the football game. But yeah, French throwing the 3 picks definitely doesn't help you at all. Let's see, there was 20 penalties in the game for over 172 yards. So, you can't win sloppy games, especially when you're turning the football over. But, hey, interesting note. I was reading this on ESPN today. They said that this was the first meeting between Southern Miss and Georgia Southern in the modern era. The last time they played football was in 1941 when they were called Mississippi Southern and Georgia Teachers College.
Yeah, the Georgia Teachers College. I know of that only because App was also known as Appalachian Teachers College.
Correct.
Or something along those lines. It wasn't Appalachian State, right? Yes, you're right. But I had looked up the fact that these 2 teams had never met since they've been called Southern Miss and Georgia Southern. So yeah, and it was funny. I like to call this one the Battle of the Birds. It's just so on the nose here with 2 birds as the logos. But thought this one could be a cool cross division matchup in the future to come, right? Because of the mascots being somewhat similar, very similar, really, but not in how they look, but how they sound and how they are described as Eagles. But yeah, I want to touch on the guy. I want to again talk about Camden Brown. Yes, again, a little late to wake up, but 12 receptions, 158 yards, and a touchdown on the night. I mean, again, Sunday guy who's playing over here in the Sun Belt. There's no doubt about it in my mind. And then on the other side, Jeffrey Pittman, 31 carries, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. Just getting it done on different sides of the ball, on different positions, but some really great games from some guys here on Thursday night.
Yeah, 31 carries. I think that's what they call a workhorse. And then they needed him down the stretch. Obviously, big lead. You're going to try to run, kind of control some clock. But yeah, and then like you said, Brown, 12 catches, 158. Like you got to double cover that guy. And I think, like you said, he's going to be a Sunday guy. So even if you do double cover him, he's probably still going to go up and make some catches. But once again, French had a good game, 313 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the 3 picks will kill you every single time. You can't turn the ball over 3 times and win football games against good teams. And once again, I think Southern Miss is a good football team. They're my favorite in the West at this point. And, I still think both sides are a little bit open, and we can kind of get into it with what happened with Old Dominion this weekend here in a little bit. But Southern Miss is playing good football. A lot of outsiders that don't follow the Sun Belt, like, oh man, they were 1-11 last year. It's like, yeah, they got a good coach who brought over a lot of really good players from a really good football team. So I guess that's kind of the benefit of the transfer portal for mid-major teams, if you will, is you can turn it around very, very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point, the Herd Dispatch joining us saying Carlos Del Rio Wilson Heisman campaign gonna be generational. Also happy to be here, guys. We appreciate it, Herd Dispatch. And yes, we are going to get about that quarterback. I saw someone on one of the Herd Facebook fan pages mention that Carlos Del Rio Wilson is a better quarterback than Colton Joseph. That was going into the game, and I'm like, can't quite like that comment because I don't think I agree. But now, now you have to question the validity of that statement because of what just happened. Obviously, this is a one-off, one-week situation. But Carlos Del Rio Wilson did come from a prominent program. He was a highly rated recruit. So it doesn't mean that he can't keep it rolling because they were looking phenomenal in that game. And I don't want to get too far into that one because we've kind of not quite got there in the schedule here, but Destiny's making a good point here. Marshall versus Southern Miss for the championship would feed families. And then she jokes and says it's going to be Troy versus JMU. But no, we talked about it a little bit before the season with Schultz from the Locked On podcast. They needed to do whatever they could to make that matchup happen this year, move some people around, make it more of, you don't want to make a mockery of it, but go ahead and lean into the storyline like a wrestling thing, right? Yes, these people want to see these two guys match up in the ring, so put it together. Like, build it up, but put it together. Just make it happen. This isn't like new school football, right? We've got coaches and players moving every year.
Yep.
Go ahead and do something that the fans want to see. How amazing would it be if it actually works out that those two teams not only meet, but it becomes the Sun Belt Championship game in the end? That just
it would be the best storyline of any conference championship game, without a doubt.
Yes, there's no question. It would be the most watched Sun Belt Championship game of all time, and no matter which institution hosted it, right? Because we know that would be what's up for grabs. Who has the better record?
It would be better in Huntington. That would be the only thing that can make that story better, is if it was in Huntington.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, because of how the crowd would react. It would be pretty crazy. Okay, let's get back into the games that we're going over specifically here. And Artie has a response to CJ. I'm sorry. Post-game press, Mr. Madison. What you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling or incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
One of the best
is, yes. Yeah, it is. one of the best for sure, from Billy Madison there. Congrats on the big win yesterday, she's saying. But yeah, that's Troy, JMU, CJ saying lock it in. So there's another vote for that matchup. It would be interesting because of both teams, trajectory as of late. Although Troy kind of fell off last year a little bit, but look, maybe we'll get to them too. And Artie probably doesn't want us to get to that one, but
He doesn't.
All right, let's jump into this other one. This is a preseason prediction from myself, Mr. TJ Corman, that had the Cajuns versus the Dukes playing in early December to decide the Sun Belt. But this one happens in week 7 now, and it looks like one team could be getting closer to that championship game, while the other team is probably falling down a peg, at least one, maybe two at this point. And we know the Cajuns had a rough start to the year, but after that big comeback victory over Marshall, they were looking like they might have turned a corner, and they might have turned a corner up until about really late third quarter, early fourth quarter in this one, right, Marv?
Yeah, I mean, they were up at halftime and then just get absolutely blanked offensively in the second half. Only had 45 total rushing yards for the entire game. They did cause 3 turnovers, which, like we talked, typically the team that wins the turnover battle, especially if it's by a wide margin, is typically the team that wins. But when you're not sustaining drives with only 45 yards rushing and giving up 193 rushing yards, it's hard to win. If you look at the stat sheet, though, they caused 3 turnovers. JMU had 10 penalties for 102 yards. You would think that, hey, that's not a recipe to win football games. But
right.
They ended up pulling it out, and Barnett and Landon Ellis connected for 3 touchdowns, and JMU dominated time of possession, 37 minutes to 23 minutes. They just stymied them in the second half and controlled the clock and overcame the turnovers.
Yeah, definitely did. TD's got a thought here. Thoughts on Rage and Review comments about upcoming Southern Miss game. You're going to have to indulge us on that. I watch those guys and I tune in as much as I can. I haven't seen anything specific on that front just yet. So let us know in the comments what that's about. I have a question for you, Marv. Now, this is situational football. It doesn't matter that it came from this game, but it did come from this game. So I will ask you the question. So the Cajuns were up going into halftime, but they had a chance to add more points before the halftime whistle. And they had the ball down within the 5-yard line of the Dukes. They had very little time left on the clock with no timeouts. They did get the first down so that they are now within like the 1 or the 2-yard line specifically. They clock the ball. You have one last play. They decided not to kick the field goal and go for the dagger early with the touchdown. They were kept out of the end zone and added no more points before halftime. Now, seeing the final score is a 10-point difference. We know that at that point, 3 points doesn't win you the game, but it does maybe change some things about how situationally you play differently later in the game. Would you have done anything different, or did you kind of like the aggressiveness of Coach Dez to go for the dagger early and try and put the Dukes in a hole before halftime?
I would have gone for it. You got momentum. Once again, you see the final score. If they had got that touchdown, they still lose the game. If they had been conservative and taken the points, and let's face it, taking points is never a bad idea, right? Especially that early in a game, it still wouldn't have affected the outcome of the game. You're up. You have a chance to, you got them on the ropes per se. You got a chance to maybe deliver an early knockout blow or at least knock them down. I like the call. Just didn't get it, but once again, didn't necessarily affect the outcome of the game. But yeah, I like the aggressive call.
Yeah, I'm actually with you. The only thing that I will say, having watched the attempts and how they came about, is I didn't love the play calling. I don't mind having Lunch have the ball in his hand to make the play, but they ran it a few times there late towards the end with no timeouts. Luckily at the one point got the first down just inside that 2-3 yard line area, and then we're able to clock the ball to stop it with 3 or 4 seconds left. But put Lunch in the backfield, swing him out with an option play, right? Like give him an option to throw, an option to pitch, or an option to keep. Yeah. They kind of just kept him right back and ran like a power eye with him, and it just didn't work. Because they had run it with Bill Davis earlier and he didn't get in. So I didn't love the fact that they were trying to run it with no time, right? Because, something happens, you go down early, now the clock's running, you can't clock it, you just got to get up to it. So if you have the opportunity to pass, throw it over everyone's head out of the end zone, save a play, get another shot, right? Like, I don't know.
I'm assuming they saw
I don't know how
something.
much you saw of it, but
I'm assuming they
go
saw
ahead.
something they liked, like, defensively. If you've got a team that's got no timeouts, you got to think they're throwing the ball, right? So you're probably going to drop back a little bit, play a little bit of coverage, and they thought that they could exploit that. So I see the rationale on it. Once again, not getting those points did not affect the outcome of the game. Maybe the momentum would have carried differently, but early, got a team down. You're not going to put them away, but you could maybe put them in a hole where offensively they got to come out with a different strategy, maybe reach a little bit more to begin with. I still like the call. The execution wasn't there, but I still like the call.
Yeah, no, I like the call to go for it too. I didn't dislike it. I just would have picked a slightly different play because we've seen Lunch can spin it.
Yeah.
People question saying, "Oh yeah, all they got to do is make sure Lunch is throwing the ball and they'll beat the Cajuns easy." I saw a couple of people say that. I said, I don't know, man. Go back and watch those throws he made against Marshall. Those were dimes he was throwing. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be the best quarterback is throwing the ball out there, but he has talent. And they said this on the broadcast. Not necessarily a practice player. You just got to have that, intensity and that adrenaline going for him to really shine. And he definitely was doing it. I mean, I will be honest, he chucked one up that should have been intercepted early in that game. And instead it went for a massive gain because of the play, a great play made by the wide receiver. And I can't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head there. May have been Robert Williams already.
Dale Martin, I believe. He had
Dale
2
Martin?
catches,
Okay.
72 yards, but a long of 69. So
there you go.
Yeah, or it could have been Robert Williams. He had a long of 44 as well, 5 catches for 134. But
I think yes, I think you're right. I think it was Robert Williams because Dale Martin's long 69 was the one that went for obviously the touchdown, but I think it was the first one in the second half when I think it was that one. Anyway, but that was a long touchdown. He kind of was going across on a crossing route, and I think one of the JMU defenders kind of tripped himself up for just a split second or something, and Dale Martin found himself wide open.
Yes.
And was an easy touchdown for them there. CJ's saying he's gonna head down to San Marcos and bring some snacks with him, but already wants him to go down there and have a party with him. He said he spotted a gang of South Alabama yesterday at Riley's Tavern here, a weird place to come across them for sure. Yeah, I guess they were playing some other team and had some USA people down over there or something. CJ says, I met some App State fans, wished I'd had snowballs.
Not yet.
Yeah, not quite. It's getting colder up there, though. Just came back from there this weekend. Not for football, obviously, because they were in Atlanta, but it's getting a little chilly. So we'll see what happens this weekend when they host Coastal Carolina up on the mountain. But let's get to one of, if not the biggest shock. First of all, the biggest shock in the Sun Belt by far. But one of the biggest shocks in all of college football this past weekend, ODU was looking like a top 25 team, rumored to maybe get in there with a couple of losses ahead of them and them winning, which a lot of people had expected them to do, even comfortably to some degree. But you have to give the Herd a lot of credit here. They have a great record of winning at home and playing well at home against big-time opponents, and they did just that, beating ODU 48-24. I mean, was this one ever in doubt? Maybe in the first quarter, Marv.
No, I mean, and not to throw salt on the wound for any Monarch fans watching, it was 48-10 in the fourth quarter. You want to talk about trash, touchdowns? I mean, I didn't watch a lot of the game, but I would be willing to bet that there's a lot of second string defensive guys in there when those last 2 touchdowns were scored. They just absolutely dominated, and ODU did themselves no favors. 5 turnovers. You cannot turn the ball over 5 times and win. And also they went 4 for 14 on third down conversions. Just sloppy game. And someone already mentioned it earlier, Carlos Del Rio Wilson, 219 passing for 2 touchdowns, 95 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. He did his best Colton Joseph impersonation. And, I don't know if long-term he's the better quarterback, but he outplayed Colton on Saturday.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I don't think long-term we can get crazy just yet, but he definitely played up to par in this game and looked the part of what they thought they were going to get when they brought him into Marshall in the first place. And you mentioned it, 95 yards, the leading rusher on the day. So the running backs didn't even accumulate as many yards on the ground as he did. And those were consistent yards. 24 was his longest rush of the day. So that's an over 5 yard per carry average. So this isn't just one or two big runs that really helped to get to this. He was getting the chunk yardage even from the quarterback position and causing that Marshall crowd to really like what they were seeing against an ODU team. Like I said, came in with a lot of hype, and that it was deserved hype, honestly. I mean, if you looked at the statistical categories that ODU ranked high in offensively, it was a lot of them, and their defense has not been shabby. So it's not like, okay, they can score on anybody, but they allow a lot of points. That's not really been the case for ODU, right? We saw what they did against Indiana early in the season. Yeah. They held Indiana in check for the most part and had one of the closest games in the country against Indiana. So this was legitimate talk of where ODU should be. And then Marshall came in here and just
handled them.
Yeah, demolished them. I mean, really, I don't know if there's another way to describe it, right?
They were a 2-touchdown underdog. So let me ask you this question. 2 touchdowns late in the game. What surprises you the most? That ODU through 50 minutes and only scored 10 points, or that the Herd offense was able to be that successful and put up 48? Now, they were aided by 5 turnovers, but, is it more surprising that the Marshall offense was able to put up that amount of points on the ODU defense, or that the ODU offense got stalled?
I would say that's a great question, honestly, because that's not just an easy answer, but I guess I would lean on the ODU offense stalling like that, because I would have said Marshall can score. I've seen Marshall, open up a little bit, but I would have thought that Colton Joseph would have got his points. So, honestly, to see them even with the 24 spot here at the end isn't enough for me to think that they would have won comfortably. I mean, if you would have said ODU scored 24, how much do you think Marshall was scored? If they didn't let me watch the game and just showed me a scorecard afterward, I would have said, it was probably 20 or 21, right? Like, it would have been a close game. So to see them only score 24 was kind of probably the more surprising of the two. But I mean, I'm not like thinking that scoring 48 points is nothing. That's really impressive against ODU.
And once again, ODU did themselves no favors and helped Marshall out. 5 turnovers. And once again, I didn't watch the game. I don't know where those turnovers were. I don't know how fortunate Marshall got with, getting turnovers like deep into ODU's territory, if they had a whole bunch of short drives for touchdowns. But you turn the ball over 5 times and you go 4 for 14 on third down, it's hard to put up points.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw some people saying, don't blow this. ODU JMU fans were waiting for this big build-up, this big game as the Royal rivalry. I put a little wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable there. But the Royal rivalry is this coming weekend. So still a huge game, but obviously knocked down a peg because of what ODU just went through against this Marshall team. But now, I mean, here's the other thing. Now the East is back wide open a little bit, right?
Well, I mean, it is right now, but, and not to get ahead and, take anything from the preview show that you and TJ will do this week, but JMU beats ODU this weekend. Like, it's a tall ladder for a lot of people to climb to get to the East, to win the East.
True. It does make it a little bit harder for sure. If ODU gets the better of them, App State's got that one loss, but it's cross-divisional. They've been playing a little bit better. We'll get into them here shortly as well. So it's making for a fun race, and we're actually going to, jump into them now. And App State team that, if you do here's what happened last week, here's what happened this week with Georgia State versus JMU, and then App State and what they did to Georgia State, 41-20, the Mountaineers come away with the victory yet again, 12-0 all time versus Georgia State at either home or away, but they stay perfect against the Panthers. I don't think this was much of a surprise, Marv, but I mean, I'll break it down a little bit further for us of what you saw.
I mean, it was the Vegas. I mean, App State was only, a 2.5-point favorite coming into the game. I mean, this was the J.J. Cole show, 300-plus passing yards, 4 touchdowns. We had talked about it a couple weeks ago. The things that were killing App were turnovers and penalties. And not taking anything away from AJ Swan, but he was turning the ball over a lot. JJ's got 2 straight starts now, has not turned the ball over yet. And when they've really cleaned up the penalties, defense has been playing a lot better. Kind of like we were talking about Marshall ODU. When your defense is on the field a whole bunch because you're turning the ball over, they get tired. It just is what it is. And especially when you're giving the other team the ball, in plus territory, or I think AJ done 3 pick sixes this year? At least 2, maybe 3.
I think
Well, right. When the other team's getting non-offensive touchdowns, it's hard for you to win. So looks to, in the past 2 weeks, to have cleaned up the turnovers, cleaned up the penalties. Defense isn't having to play with their back against the wall all the time. And let's face it, Georgia State's not that great. They threw 2 quarterbacks. One was okay. The other one wasn't overly impressive. They can't run the ball to save their lives. Just a dominant performance by App. I predicted App to win. I wouldn't have thought it was a 3-touchdown win. And to be honest, it was a big lead. It was 31-0 in the third quarter. App pulls, JJ puts in the freshman quarterback and a lot of second stringers. And doesn't say it got a little dicey there, but Georgia State definitely put, some unanswered scores on the board pretty quickly. But the game was never really in jeopardy or anything like that. So dominant performance. And App's got Coastal at home this weekend. And like we said, with the JMU Old Dominion game, App gets a win, and if JMU loses, then it's a 3-team race in the East, and heck, Marshall's playing pretty good football right now too. So The East get very interesting.
Yeah, I don't think it's solidified at all. In fact, it's just muddier after what happened this past weekend. CJ's predicting App by 50. I guess that's in the Coastal game. We'll get to them, though.
I would put money on Coastal if the spread was 50. I still think that's by 50.
I would definitely put money on Coastal if the spread was 50 as well. I will tell you a couple things that surprised me in this one. Jakari Lewis, going for more yards, just barely, but he did go for more yards than Dominion, who's been the bell cow running back. Yeah. But they had this good mixture of, that they're a little bit of that lightning and thunder type of dynamic from old school Carolina Panthers day with
Jonathan Stewart and Memphis. D'Angelo
Williams.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, those two. It was kind of like that dynamic. Not to the extent. I mean, 57 and 56 yards with 1 touchdown between the two of them. So I mean, nothing that was lighting the place up on the ground. But it was a little bit surprising to see Dominion go for less carries too. So there's also that. Had he had 14,
they said on the broadcast that the Dow had said that they were going to give Jakari a couple more carries because they were trying to conserve the impact on Dominion. He's carried the ball a lot the first 5 games of the year. So if you're anticipating making a stretch run and competing, don't beat your workhorse up if you don't have to.
It's a good point, and that is a smart play by Dow Loggins early on in the season to kind of save Dominion and not get him too beat up there. Cameron Brown and TJ Finley, like you said, keep going back and forth between the two quarterbacks. Again, listening to the State of Atlanta podcast, guys, they just want to see one consistent guy. They seem to want it to be Cameron Brown. He's younger. He's going to possibly be with this team longer. They think what they've seen out of him is actually a little bit more impressive than what they've seen with Finley. So I can see that, right? Like you're talking about, this is a rebuild a little bit, get some momentum going to next season. Are you going to do that with a TJ Finley guy who may not be around much longer? Or do you want to give it to the young kid, get him in those situations, let him learn from those things, and then carry that ability and knowledge base into next season and see if he improves further, a little bit like what we've seen with Colton Joseph, right? Like it was last year, it was a lot of backyard quarterback ball. Just get the ball in his hands, let him run it a lot, throw minimally till he gets a better grasp of the offense. I don't know. What do you think about that, Marv?
I think Cameron Brown was the better quarterback. I would lean, and kind of like you and I were talking before the show with App, like JJ's playing so good. He's a sophomore. AJ's a senior. Do you go ahead and give the guy another year in the offensive system? And that's assuming that Georgia State's coach is going to be around next year because he hasn't won a lot of football games. I think if the younger guy is playing better and you're building for the future, you got to let him go, right? Just let him play, let him learn in the game, as bad as that might stink sometimes. But if you're projecting for the future, I think that's a smart play. There's a double-edged sword to that, though. What happens if he's really good? In the NIL and transfer portal culture that we live in now, you could let a whole bunch of other teams know what you got. I don't think that's the case for either App or Georgia State, to be honest, but I'd let the young guy go. Georgia State, just talk on them for a second. Ted Hurst, really good receiver, 9 catches, 105 yards. Javion Robinson, another really good receiver, 9 catches, 85 yards. They've got the pieces. They can't run the ball very well, and they don't do a great job stopping the pass. So, and I want to touch on one point. We talked on it last week. Did you watch the game on ESPN Plus?
Yes.
Was there 19,000 people in the stands?
No. Not even close.
Not even close. And that's they got to quit doing those inflated attendance statistics, because there might have been 6,000 people there, and probably 4,000 of them were App fans.
Yeah, and even CJ, the JMU fan here, is saying no, but he knew that because he was watching the game last week when they also said there was about 19,000 for James Madison as well, and we know that not to be the case. And if that number has been consistent between last week and this week, that tells you that's tickets sold or tickets accounted for, what, however they're doing that. But it's not a good look.
Someone's got to tell Georgia State that you don't get to project your season attendance for one game. It's on a per game basis.
CJ said that number has so much helium to it. Yeah, it definitely does.
Hey, I will say this real quick. They showed during the broadcast the new baseball stadium being constructed. That's a nice facility.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that they might have just broken ground, or they're about to. I know that the plans were. They showed
it's well underway. It's from the pictures they showed, it looked like they had basically the skeleton, if you will, of the stands, and the field was already in place. Like the turf was already in place. You could see a clear, defined infield, outfield, no fence or anything like that. But they say that it will be open for baseball season.
No way.
Dude, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty darn positive that's what they were saying on the broadcast.
I'm going to have to check that, because I thought I just heard from those guys that they hadn't even broken ground on this facility yet, because they hadn't even, unless it was, I know that they actually talked about the parking aspect, and maybe they meant the parking lot for people to park and go to games has not been broken. Maybe that's what they meant, like specific to a section. Maybe that's what it was.
They made the comment, hey, App State fans, when you come here to watch baseball, you'll be able to you'll be in this new park. You'll have nice facilities to come see. So it did look nice. What they showed, it looks like it's going to be, one of the nicer stadiums in the Sun Belt. Obviously, new is nice, but looked pretty cool.
Well, as Marv, as part of 3B, we know that they've had one of the worst baseball setups in the entire league for many years. Literally looks worse than some high school fields that I've seen, to be totally honest with you. And they were known as the Bus Lot Boys, because you played right beside the. Oh man, that would have been a good name for our podcast too. But we'll keep it with the Belt Baseball Boys. Okay, so this one is kind of getting it all back together as Coastal Carolina whoops up on ULM in Conway, a rainy game. If you can see as the visual here, even in the game picture, you can see the rain clearly coming down. Not a great attendance, but obvious because of the weather was never going to be great to start with. Shots and clears 23 to just 8 points for the Warhawks. I'll be honest, Marv, this one shocked the hell out of me. Did you find this one surprising at all?
Considering the weather, no. I don't think either team's a good football team, to be completely honest. ULM went 1 for 13 on third down, which is really, really bad. And Coastal put the ball on the ground 4 times. They only lost one of them, but they did put on the ground 4 times. But weather made things bad or hard on the offense. Coastal was 8 for 19 passing for 92 yards, but they ran for 285 yards. Nothing really surprising there. I would have liked to seen that game played in better weather, but for us here in coastal North Carolina and South Carolina, had that nor'easter come through and kind of make things crappy, and they got to play in it.
Yeah. The part that maybe didn't surprise me was Coastal's defense playing up to speed. Like that's been their strong point throughout the season. It's the offense that's been just straight up bad, really, to be honest with you, except for maybe that South Alabama game where they looked really good somehow. You've got a different quarterback coming in here with Collier. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Like you said, though, not necessarily impressive quarterback play given the weather. And I'll put Zach's comment back up here. He says he was there. It was more than raining. It was absolutely pouring. And yes, it was bad. It was really, really bad. And people said, well, I saw somebody say, well, that's terrible attendance, even with the rain. I'm like, well, I don't think you understand. This, like Zach said, this was pretty much like raining sideways. This wasn't like, oh, guys, it may rain on and off throughout the game. No, this was
Essentially,
probably a very,
I mean,
yeah, pretty miserable experience, I'd assume. Marv, would you want to take your wife and kids to a game like that, right?
no, not at all, because they wouldn't go. I've got one kid that would be like, I don't care, throw me on a poncho, let's go. But my
Right.
wife's not sitting out in that crap.
No. And so I think that's one aspect of things people forget, right? Like if you're a student and you want to give your students a hard time for not going to a game because hey, you get wet, wear a bathing suit, you're at a beach school, fine. Go ahead and lay it on the students if you really feel the need to. Don't lay it on families where they have to worry about keeping people comfortable, happy, properly fed, right? Which we know is not a concern at Coastal because they have free concessions.
That's
So that's
free.
the easy part there. But yeah, I'm not
Added
taking my
that,
wife and kids to.
added
Yeah,
that it's a night game. People traveling at night. You go to a football game, want to have a little fun, have a couple drinks, and next thing you know, you're leaving. It's 10:30. It's pouring rain. Students show up, just tailgate excessively, and you won't even know that you're wet. It's fine. Just go do it. I mean, we're not immune to that at the App State days. It'd be freezing cold, and you just have a really good time at tailgate. You go sit in the stands and don't even notice it.
I will tell you, and you probably remember this game. It was a game against Wyoming. I think it was like the year before Josh Allen was their quarterback, but they had come to Boone, and it was just raining the whole day. It wasn't terribly hard rain, but it just rained all day. And I knew that going in, and I wore a swimsuit for shorts. I just said, screw it. I'm leaning into it. I'm just going to get wet, and I know I'm going to get wet. I'm just going to have fun with it and not worry about like trying to not get wet. And it was a good time. But yeah, I mean, you got to think about this. That was before cell phones were such a big deal.
Yeah.
At that point, you probably don't take much of anything in there wallet wise, so you don't come out with soaking wet with that. So it's a little different,
That was
day and
also
age.
for the invention of ESPN Plus, where you had the option of
True.
sitting indoors and still being able to see the game. If you wanted to go see it, if you wanted to see any action, you had to be there live.
Yeah, absolutely. CJ's bringing up the snowball effect. He's never going to let that snowball thing go. They were wearing helmets and pads, CJ. It's fine. They can take the snowball hits.
Yeah, they'd have won that game. That comment probably didn't get brought up, but I digress.
True. Very, very true. I think they were loving it, man. They were like egging the people on, throw them out. There's not really much you can do with the rain here. I do want to give a shout out to Coastal. As you said, 285 yards rushing, but that doesn't just come for one or two guys. Their top rushers, let's just listen to this: 86 yards, 63 yards, 48 yards, 30 yards, 29 yards, and 20 yards. And so very nicely spread out, which is a shout out to Dominick Nicely, one of their running backs there. But yeah, they did a great job getting everybody the ball to make that work instead of just focusing on one or two guys. And shout out to Braylon McReynolds and Zach Palmer-Smith on the other side as well. For what the game was, with how sloppy it was, 78 yards for McReynolds, 37 on a lot less carries for Palmer-Smith. But those are the two guys that have been running the ball successfully for the Warhawks. I'll say I'm surprised because the ULM offense is really predicated on having success in this type of weather, if you ask me, right? They don't throw the ball well. They don't have many standout wide receivers, but they have run it well and they keep it on the ground, and the defense has been good. So, yeah, I was just kind of surprised that if anybody took control of this game like this, it was Coastal. I would have thought it was ULM. But again, weather games like this, almost everything goes out the window, and it's just who can be better with the ball, and that was obviously Coastal Carolina on Saturday night.
If you look at the stats, right, pretty even in total yards. ULM actually had some success through the air. They 176 to 92. They ran the ball for 140 yards. Time of possession was almost even. 2 turnovers to 1. It wasn't anything crazy. I think the biggest stat that sticks out to me besides the 285 rushing for Coastal was the 1 for 13 on third downs. They just couldn't sustain a drive.
Yeah, I'll throw one more very impressive stat that I didn't even realize this until I'm looking at it now, to be honest. But Coastal's kicker, 3 for 3 on field goals and 2 for 2 on extra points. Perfect in a game that was anything but for the weather. So shout out, man, I'm going to butcher this. Afrokita? I have no idea. I'm sure I'm crushing that last name, and I apologize to him. But phenomenal game by him. This is not one of those games where you take many chances with the field goals. Probably end up figuring you might punt or just go for it on short yardage situations in order to just kind of not turn the ball over. And he was getting it done from the field goal or the spots on the field as far as kicking, because he's got those extra points as well there. So shout out to kicking in that type of weather. Not easy to do. All right, let's get to what was, one heck of a finish. Really, I don't know. We'll talk about this because, first of all, Troy wins this one in overtime, 48-41. So easily one of the best games of the weekend, if not the best game of the weekend, because of the scoring output. You could talk about it not being great because of lack of defense with a 48-41 scoreline there. But it looked like Texas State just fell off there in that second half, Marv. I know you got to watch some of this one. It went pretty late into the night, obviously, though. So what did you see early on in this one?
I saw a team jump out to a big lead. Artie, sorry, turn the show off now, buddy. I saw a team jumped out to a really big lead, and then I saw the other team have a really good quarterback and just will his team back. 415 yards and 5 touchdowns. And it wasn't like Texas State's offensive output was terrible. I mean, they moved the ball pretty well. DJ Epps had 10 catches, 148 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Texas State only did have 46 rushing yards. But yeah, 28-7 at the end of the first quarter. And you see the final score here. Just not that killer instinct, right? Like you didn't put the foot on the throat and just end it. You let a team come back. I don't know. And I know Artie's kicking costs 2 games in a row. Defense coach needs to be fired. He's horrible. You give up 48 points. I can understand why you would want to say that, but yeah, you just, you got to learn how to win the games when you're up big. Being up by 21 points in the first quarter, just you hate to see it for them, but hey, Troy's got a prolific offense, and Troy's also got a stud on defense. Jordan Stringer, 15 tackles, 1 sack. I think that's his second double-digit tackle game of the year. And the 2 previous games, I think he had 8 and 9, so he's just racking up tackles left and right.
Yeah. I've got a couple comments there. Artie's just saying, season ended last week. This is really just confirming it. Incredibly embarrassed and frustrating. Fans already checked out. Coaching staff feels like they're on another planet, apparently. And if Oklahoma State wants GJ Kenny, they can have him. He's out coached by a wet paper bag, and it's over. He's been bad at defensive coaching all year. And the defense has been the weak point for sure. There's no question about that. The offense has overcome it in a number of games. As he mentioned, the kicking game has cost them here recently 2 chances to win games with a kick.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do it, which is crazy to me because we've had Tyler Robles, as a special teams player of the week early in the season as one of the better kickers. I think if I remember right off the top of my head, he went like 5 for 5 from field goals, and like 1 or 2 of them are both from 50+ yards. So he has the ability and the talent for making great kicks, but just in those clutch moments hasn't come up with them to put a game like this away, because this all goes away if they end up winning this game in regulation. But yeah, it didn't happen. It's weird. Brad Jackson, 248 yards through the air, 77 on the ground. He only had the touchdown on the ground. He didn't have anything through the air. He didn't have any interceptions. It's just kind of a crazy stat line to have that many yards and not come away with a touchdown or an interception, except for what he had handled on the ground.
Listen,
I think you flipped it earlier, though.
Yeah,
You
I did.
mentioned Texas State.
Troy only had 43 yards rushing. Texas State had 326 yards rushing. They had a very balanced offensive attack. I mean, they actually outgained Troy by 130 yards, something like that. No turnovers. Time of possession was fairly even. The kicks killed them. They doubled them in penalties. They had 10 penalties for 79 yards. But yeah, I mean, not to be redundant, right? But you get up 28-7, you got to win that football game. Tucker Kilchrist is a pretty good quarterback. Listen to this: 30 for 39, 415, 5 touchdowns. Average completion was 10.6 yards. So it wasn't dinking and dunking, right? They were moving the ball downfield. And DJ Epps 10 catches, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. But that's what happens when you get down big and you can't run the ball, right? You got to air it out, and did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, as far as through the air, you're right. But then listen to this stat. He had 14 attempts carrying the ball for -4 yards total.
Yeah.
Now, he did have a 5-yard, he didn't go backwards every time. I know some people don't think about these types of things. He had a 5-yard gain at one point, but obviously getting sacked and tackled in the backfield, you minus or take away those yards. And so he comes away with a -4 yard rushing total. But it's a good thing he can get it done through the air, because you don't have to run if you can do what he did through the air and throw it all over the place. So
listen,
it looks like,
Troy's longest run of the day was 16 yards. Their leading rusher had 18 yards. Once again, it looked, from being down early, they just abandoned the run game and just said, hey, we're going to throw it. Which, when it's working, it's working, right?
Yeah, and it was definitely working to get them to come back like this. The other thing I'll point out, Artie says it's beyond embarrassing and shameful. Honestly, one of the worst letdowns in my 30-plus years as a Bobcat fan. That's saying something, because this team had a lot of intrigue, a lot of energy, a lot of passion coming into the season, thinking we're going to go out on top here in the Sun Belt before we move over to the Pac-12. And that does not look like that's going to be the case. Not over yet. It's not quite over. 0-2 in the Sun Belt West does not mean you're out of the race just yet. There's opportunity abound there still, but it won't be easy to overcome, because now you're going to need help, and you've got to win those games against other teams you think might be there at the top, so you own the tiebreaker. And obviously not having it against Troy may be a big deal now moving forward. Boom, boom, 418. I like that. It's like he's got the wrestling mask on, and the nickname on YouTube sounds like that too. Bear in mind, Tucker Kilchrist is the backup quarterback, and we finished the game with one original starter on the O-line. I did not know the O-line stat. I knew Kilchrist was the backup coming into the season, because Goose is still rehabbing from injury.
He's not.
He may not be. I don't know. You're making a good point. If Goose comes back, do you say, hey, we're just going to give the starting role right back? Or do you say, look, let's let Tucker keep it, and if we need you, you will come back in. But this also gives you more time to come back and get completely healthy instead of having to rush back. Now they're feeling comfortable at that quarterback position, even at the number 2 spot.
Yeah, but hey, go back to Texas State for a second. They do have to play defense. Offensively, if I were to tell you, hey, your quarterback's going to go 19 for 22 and throw for 250 yards, not turn the ball over. You'll have 2 rushers go over 100 yards. You'll run for 326 and 5 touchdowns, and your team won't turn the ball over. You're like, man, how bad did we beat them? What was the final score?
True. Very true. That's a great way to put that. It's kind of like we did with that ODU and Marshall thing earlier. If you told me this, then I would assume this. Same thing there. You would assume that that's not only just a win, Marv. I would say that you would assume that's a very easy win with what you just lifted off.
Yeah, once again, going back to ODU, 5 turnovers. That's you can't win games with 5 turnovers.
No, not at all. Not easy to do. Well, that wraps up the wrap. I do want to touch a little bit onto next week. We don't usually do too much of this, but I do want to make mention of this because it's important. For the first time since week 2 of this season, all 14 Sun Belt teams will be playing this week. And that starts on Tuesday night. Mark that calendar, folks. Tuesday night, as Arkansas State and South Alabama will be going live at 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central Time on ESPN2. So we will have some nationally televised Sun Belt football. Also of note, we've got the Georgia schools matching up. Obviously, neither one of them doing too great, but that's always got a little bit of juice, and certainly one that people will want to check in on because we know how much those two schools do not like each other. We've got what is now a bigger matchup, but a little bit underrated. Southern Miss versus Louisiana. This is one of those ones to me that makes sense for like a rivalry week type of matchup, right? Go ahead and pair ULM up with Arkansas State now. Keep that Rice Bowl rivalry going. Give me Southern Miss and Louisiana as two fan bases who are heated, don't like each other, and need to go head to head in a big time matchup. We get that one this Saturday in the Sun Belt. And then we got to wrap it up with none other than the Royal rivalry. Again, little juice knocked down because of what happened to ODU, but this one's still going to carry some momentum across the board in the Sun Belt East as ODU plays James Madison. Marv, are you going to give me which one of those you want to see the most this weekend? Or are you going to lean on the App State Coastal game, even though it's not maybe on the radar as much?
So I'm just looking at the schedule for next week. There's a ton of intriguing games for a lot of different reasons. So I'll touch on a couple. You mentioned Southern Miss, Louisiana. Southern Miss can kind of take a step into separating themselves as the West. Texas State, Marshall. Can Marshall and Del Rio ride the magic that they had last week and kind of stay in contention in the East? ODU and James Madison, once again, if JMU wins that game, they kind of set themselves apart in the East. App State's got to win against Coastal to keep that going. And then Troy, UL, Monroe in the West. I mean, whoever loses that game has got a tall order in front of them. Whoever wins that game is going to keep pace with somebody, or with a Southern Miss loss could find themselves, kind of not in the driver's seat, but at least in the lead for the West. So tons of intriguing games. The one that I am, I'll take the App State game out of the equation. Old Dominion, James Madison. I think that's a clear battle for the front runner in the East. And once again, JMU wins that game. They've got to be the front runner until they screw it up.
Yeah, absolutely. To note, James Madison is the only 3-0 team currently in the Sun Belt. There are two other undefeated teams in conference play, both in action again, as Southern Miss 2-0 and Troy 2-0 over there in the West. But really, like I said, I still don't think anybody's kind of completely out of it just yet. Of course, those 0-2 teams to start the year aren't looking good. There's a lot of work to make up, but we've seen crazier things happen. The two Georgia schools at the bottom of the East, one of them is going to get a conference victory this week. So one of them will jump up just a little bit at the very least. And then you've got Texas State and South Alabama. Both teams, to me, have had a lot of success on the field, but not on the final scoreboard, right? Like I've been impressed with some of the play I've seen from Texas State and South Alabama, but it's not going on the final record. And so I don't think for that reason that these teams are completely out of it. Again, they don't have an easy road now. They've got to overcome a bad start. But I'd be shocked if they both continue to keep losing with the way that they have the ability to play games. Like you said, they were up 21 points in the first quarter, Texas State was. Scored 28 total. It's just kind of crazy to me that is kind of what's existing here. Oh, look who's jumping in here last minute before we get out of here. Trojan Joe, sorry for being late. Have both Texas State fan already left for the Pac-2 Syndicate? Oh, man. Yeah.
I will say this. Big week, as we mentioned. There's only one game. So 6 of the 7 games all have a spread less than a touchdown. That's how competitive they think the games are going to be this weekend. Now, we all know that Vegas is wrong. Look at ODU Marshall from this last weekend, but anticipating some really, really good football. And we're midway through the year. This is about the time where the good teams start to separate themselves, and several teams have the opportunity to do that this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know exactly what we'll do to kind of preview the Tuesday matchup. Obviously, that one goes live and gets played before we do our Wednesday show. And I think there's at least 1 or 2 other Tuesday or Wednesday matchups this season as well. So whatever we decide to do, we will try to also do moving forward. Maybe Marv and I will jump on those when we have more time to prep and think about that. We'll decide what we're going to do on that aspect of it. But again, tune in, ESPN2. Again, even if you want to hate watch these teams, do it because it's Sunbelt viewership. We need to start putting ourselves on the map as a bigger group of fans. If you want to, as a Troy fan, watch and hope South Alabama looks terrible and loses the game, just go ahead and do it because that viewership will drive it up still. And we need all the viewers we can get as a conference to get a little bit more respect and a little bit more media dollars when we can go up and grab it. But any final words before we get out of here tonight, Marv?
We were talking about this before the podcast. Completely everything unrelated to everything we talked about. But don't be surprised if you see a former Sunbelt coach get a really big look at a really big job here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, it could happen. It could happen. You know who might also be in the running? We're talking about Signetti, folks, for those that are not cued in here. But I don't know if I'd rule out Drinkowitz in Missouri going up to Penn State. I mean, what he's done in Missouri, the only thing I would say is you're in the SEC, you might have a better chance, right, than Penn State. Like an SEC school can lose like 1 or 2 games depending on who you play. Yes. And still be in a good position. You lose 2 Big Ten games, and that's not quite looked at the same way.
No, and I don't know what Signetti's making at Indiana. I know what Drinkwitz is making at Missouri. And listen, Penn State's got all the money in the world, but Drink looks happy, and he's built something really good there. I mean, that game they had with Alabama this weekend was phenomenal. Really good football game. I don't know if he leaves.
I could see him staying. I also think and maybe you remember this better. I think his wife's got family in the Midwest, so that might also not be like that. Happy Valley is returning to like a Boone type scenario. Obviously, it's much bigger, but it's in the mountains. It's a little bit more secluded. You're halfway between Pittsburgh and Philly. You're not really like right around the corner. It's a good, healthy, like almost 3-hour drive either direction to really get to one of those major cities. So interesting. But yeah, I could see. I wouldn't be shocked, right? The climate's definitely better down there in Missouri.
Yeah, already cast us who the Texas State defensive coordinator. Yes, he's going to go. He's going to go run the College Station JV football high school team there. No, like we were talking, Signetti. I think he went to college or either played at Pitt. I think he's got ties to the Pennsylvania area. He's definitely one of the hottest names in coaching right now. If you're looking for a guy that is a proven winner. And it's like we were talking, he's got an ego big enough to think that he could go there and win a national championship. So I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need any further validation of that, just Google him as he's
just ask him. He'll tell you he's a winner. Google me. But hey, if that happens, you're about to find out how much money Indiana has.
Absolutely.
Indiana, if that's the case, Indiana's going to have to try to open up that checkbook.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just so you know, Penn State is about to be paying James Franklin very healthily.
$49 million left on his contract.
For the next 6 years, that guy will be making over $51 an hour, I think is what I saw the math at.
Now, let me ask this question. You might not know the details. If he takes another job, does the salary from that job offset the $49 million? Because James Franklin's going to get another job. Like he's not a bad coach. Right. He's going to get hired somewhere. I think some of those buyout or termination clauses have an offset clause inside of them.
That would be interesting to see if that does happen. And I know Penn State would love to see that help them out in some form or fashion. But
if not, Franklin's going to go to Virginia Tech or somewhere, a school like that, and sign a 5-year contract and make $25 million. And he'll just sit back and say, I just made, $75 million the last 5 years. This is a pretty good gig.
Yeah, I hate to say because, you have a family and kids involved and everything. But if you could get a head coaching gig, it's one of the best jobs. It's not easy. I'm not saying that. It's one of the best jobs to have because even if you fail, you get paid. None of these guys are getting fired and getting thrown out the door with nothing. So it's hard to feel bad.
Don't feel bad for them at all. He's going to be just fine. His mortgage is going to be paid. He's good.
Yeah. There won't be any feeling bad on my part. again, you come into the season as the expectation to be like the best team in football and shoe in for the college football playoff. Now you've lost 3 straight games to 2 very subpar opponents. The Oregon lost, you could say, okay,
that was a good competitive football game.
It was, yes. And so that's not going to be a shocker to anybody. But these last 2, you can't do that at Happy Valley with the expectation that was levied upon them, whether it was right or wrong. I mean, a lot of people thought this might be the best Penn State team ever, and that is not turning out to be the case. But enough about that.
They were preseason number 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, yeah. But anyway, we'll see if it wraps back into the Sun Belt a little bit with who may end up there. And we'll keep an eye on that, as well as Tuesday's upcoming matchup in the Sun Belt. And we'll see you sometime before that, but certainly for Wednesday's preview show for the rest of the weekend's action. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks, y'all.